I am going to tell you something plain. You have a rose bush in your yard, maybe more than one, and every spring you wait for it. You wait all winter long, and then the weather turns warm, and you think, this is the year. This is the year I am going to see those roses the way they are supposed to be. Full and heavy and so thick with bloom, you can barely see the leaves underneath. But it does not happen that way, does it? You get a few flowers, thin ones, tired-looking ones. They come out small and fade fast, and by July you're looking at green sticks with maybe 3 flowers on the whole plant, if you are lucky. Your neighbor down the road, he does not do anything special. He does not spray anything. He does not fuss over his garden the way you fuss over yours. He does not read books about roses. He does not buy the special rose fertilizer from the garden center. But his rose bush looks like a garden center picture. It is covered, just covered in blooms so thick you can barely count them. And you are standing there thinking, what does he know that I do not know? What am I doing wrong? What is the thing that nobody taught me? What is the secret? And the answer is so simple, so cheap, so close to your hand that you are about to give up on the best thing you will ever grow, for want of something nobody taught you. My name is Elias. My family came here from the Palatinate in 1838, and we have farmed and lived on the same Lancaster County ground ever since. My great-grandmother, she kept roses. Not for show, not for foolishness. But because roses grow when everything else is struggling, and because a rose in a vase on the table was medicine for the spirit when the work was hard and the days were long, and the winter seemed like it would never end. She kept them against the south side of the house where the heat came strong. She knew something about roses that was not in any book. It was just known. It was passed down from her mother to her, and then to my grandmother, and then to my mother. My mother learned from her mother. Esther learned from her mother, and when Esther and I were first married, we moved into our own place with a small yard, and Esther looked around and said we needed a rose bush. I asked her why. She said because a woman needs roses. So we planted one, and I watched my wife tend to it. I watched what she did, and one evening in spring, I asked her why the roses in her mother's yard were so different from the ones I remembered from my own childhood, why they were so full and so abundant. She looked at me like I had asked her why the sun was hot. She said, my mother feeds them. She put something down. I asked her what. She said, baking soda. Just baking soda. At first I thought she was joking with me. Baking soda. The thing you use to make bread rise? The thing you keep in the cupboard for baking? The thing that costs almost nothing? I thought surely there must be more to it than that. But she was not joking. She was telling me the truth, and I have watched it work for 40 years now. I have watched it work in my own garden. I have watched my children use it in their gardens. I have watched what happens when you understand this one simple thing. Here's the thing, almost everyone has this backward on, and it changes everything you think about roses and soil and what a plant actually needs. We think roses need fertilizer. Big, complicated, expensive fertilizer. We think they need special rose food, the kind that comes in a bag with a picture of a perfect rose on the front. We think they need more of everything. More nitrogen, more phosphorus, more trace minerals, more of whatever the man in the garden center says they need. And so we buy it. We bring it home, we spread it around, and the roses still do not bloom like they should. The bush still looks tired. The flowers still come out small and thin and fade fast. And so we buy more fertilizer. We try a different brand. We try rose spikes. We try rose water. We try everything except the one thing that actually matters. But the old folks knew something different. They knew that most of the time the soil where your rose bush is growing is not hungry for more food. The soil is not starving. The soil is sick. It is wrong. It is not in the right balance. And when you fix the balance, when you make the soil right, the rose bush will bloom like it was made to bloom. You do not need to feed it more. You need to heal what is already there. That is the whole thing. That is the spine of everything I am going to tell you. That changes everything. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book at eliasyoder.com. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. Now, let me tell you what baking soda actually does, because if you understand why it works, you will use it right, and you will see results instead of guessing and hoping. Soil has something called pH. That is a measure of how acidic or alkaline the soil is. I will not bore you with the science. But this you need to know, because it changes everything. Most soils in most of this country are too acidic. The rain makes them acidic. The old leaves that fall and rot make them acidic. The acids from decomposing plants make them acidic. Time itself makes them acidic. And when soil gets too acidic, plants cannot use the nutrients that are already there. They are starving, not because there is no food, but because the soil is in the wrong condition to let them eat. It is like having a full plate of food sitting in front of you, but your mouth is wired shut. You are hungry, but you cannot eat. That is what happens to roses in acidic soil. The food is there, the nitrogen is there, the phosphorus is there, the calcium is there, but the rose bush cannot use it. The roots cannot take it up. It is as if the cupboard is full but the door is locked. That is what acidic soil does. It locks the door. Baking soda is alkaline. It is the opposite of acidic. When you add baking soda to acidic soil, you are raising the pH. You are making the soil less acidic. You are opening the door so the plant can eat. You are unlocking the cupboard. And when a rose bush can eat what is already in the soil, when it can access the nutrients that are already there waiting for it, it blooms. It blooms like it is supposed to. It blooms like the rose bush down the road that you have been envying all these years. Here is the method. I will walk you through it step by step, and after each step I will tell you why it matters. First, in early spring, when the ground is starting to warm, but before the leaves are fully out, you look at your rose bush. You look at it carefully. You're not looking for bugs or disease right now. You're looking at the shape of it. You're looking at where the main stems are. You're looking at the base of the plant where it comes out of the ground. You need to know where to put the baking soda. Why? Because you want it close to the roots, where it can work. You do not want to throw it randomly and hope it lands in the right place. You want intention. You want to know what you're doing. You want precision in the right place. Next, you take baking soda, a regular box of baking soda from the grocery store, the cheap kind. $1, maybe $2 for a box depending on where you live. That is all. You do not need special rose baking soda or anything like that. There is no such thing as special rose baking soda. It is all the same. Regular baking soda is perfectly fine. You take 1 tablespoon, just 1. A regular kitchen tablespoon, not a teaspoon, not a handful, 1 tablespoon. And you mix it with 1 gallon of water. That is your ratio. 1 tablespoon per gallon. Why 1 tablespoon? Because too much baking soda can actually hurt the soil if you overdo it. You are not trying to make the soil into concrete. You are not trying to make it completely alkaline. You are trying to gently shift the balance. You are trying to move it from too acidic to just right. And 1 tablespoon per gallon is gentle. It is enough to work. It is enough to make a difference. It is not so much that you damage anything. This is important. Do not think more is better. More is not better. 1 tablespoon per gallon. That is the answer. That is the right amount. Now, you take this water and you pour it around the base of the rose bush. Not on the leaves. Do not spray it on the foliage. Not on the flowers. Around the base, in the soil, where the roots are. Where the plant can drink it. You pour it slowly. You do not dump it all at once like you are filling a bucket. You pour it steady, letting it soak in. Why? Because if you dump it all at once, some of it runs off. Some of it does not actually get into the soil. Some of it just runs away down the hill or across the yard or into the gutter. But if you pour it slow, the soil drinks it. The soil holds it. It gets into the root zone where it needs to be. It penetrates. It works. Here is the timing. This is crucial. You do this when the ground is moist. Not waterlogged, not soaking wet like a sponge that cannot take any more water, but moist, like after a rain, like when you have watered the garden the day before. If the ground is bone dry, you water the rosebush first, wait an hour, and then pour in your baking soda water. Why? Because if the soil is too dry, it will not absorb the water. It will run off or sit on top like water on a waxed surface. It will not get into the soil where it needs to be. But if the soil is already moist, it will drink your baking soda solution right in. The soil needs to be receptive. Think of it like trying to teach a person who is angry and closed off. They will not hear you. But if you calm them first, if you get them in the right frame of mind, if they are receptive, then they will listen. Soil is the same way. Now, you do this one time in early spring. That is all. One treatment. Not every week, not every day, not every time you think about it. One time. Why just one time? Because baking soda does not wash out of the soil quickly. It stays. It works over the season. It continues to affect the pH. If you keep adding more and more, you will eventually make the soil too alkaline, and that is as bad as it being too acidic. You will swing the pendulum too far the other way. You will create a different problem. One time in spring is enough. One treatment, that is all you need. But here's something important that I need to tell you. If you live somewhere that gets a lot of rain, and most of us do, you might do this twice. Once in early spring and once in early summer, maybe 6 weeks later. The rain will gradually wash the baking soda down into the deeper soil. The rain will gradually shift the pH back toward the acidic side. If you do this twice, you are keeping it balanced all season long. You are maintaining the right pH. But if you live somewhere dry, where it does not rain much, one time might be all you need. You have to think about your own weather. You have to pay attention to your own place. You have to know your own climate. Now let me tell you what happens next, because this is where people give up too early. This is where most people fail. They do this one time. They wait 1 week. They see no change. They look at the rose bush and it looks exactly the same. The flowers are not suddenly bigger. The buds are not suddenly more abundant. They think, Elias was wrong. This does not work. This is nonsense. And they stop. They go back to buying expensive fertilizer. But this is not magic that works overnight. This is not a poison that kills on contact. This is soil chemistry. It takes time. The baking soda has to dissolve into the soil water. It has to mix with the soil particles. It has to gradually change the pH. The rosebush has to sense that change. The rosebush has to respond. The roots have to start accessing nutrients that were locked away. New growth has to form. Buds have to develop. This takes weeks. Sometimes it takes 3 weeks before you see anything different. Sometimes it takes a full month. But then, in about 4 to 6 weeks, you will see the difference. The rosebush will have more buds. The buds will be bigger. The flowers will come out fuller. They will last longer on the plant. They will be darker, richer colors. They will smell stronger. By July, if you have done this right, if you have been patient, you will have blooms on that bush like you have never seen before. You will be the one with the rose bush that everyone else is envying. But you have to be patient. You have to trust the method. You have to do it and then let it work. You have to not interfere. You have to not keep checking. You have to let time do what time does. Now I will tell you the ways people get this wrong, because I want you to succeed. I want you to see results. I want you to understand why this works so you do not make these mistakes. The first mistake is impatience. A man will do this one time and expect roses in a week. When nothing changes in 7 days, he thinks the whole thing is nonsense. He thinks I am wrong. He thinks this does not work. But soil chemistry is not fast. Soil chemistry is slow and steady. Patience is not optional. It is part of the method. It is part of the price you pay for doing this the old way instead of using chemicals that work fast and then fade away. Patience is part of it. The second mistake is overdoing it. A man thinks if 1 tablespoon is good, then 3 tablespoons is better. Or he thinks if I do this once, doing it twice a week is twice as good. He thinks more is always better. But this is wrong. Too much baking soda in the soil will make it too alkaline, and then your rosebush will have problems. It will get something called chlorosis, where the leaves turn yellow and the plant gets weak. It will stop blooming. You will have made the problem worse, not better. 1 tablespoon per gallon, 1 or 2 times per season, depending on your rain. That is all. That is the right amount. The third mistake is doing this to a rosebush that is already in trouble. If your rosebush has a disease, if it has been eaten by pests, if it is dying, if it looks sick, baking soda is not going to fix it. You have to deal with the actual problem first. You have to remove the disease or the pests. You have to get the plant healthy again. Then you use baking soda. Baking soda is for a healthy rosebush that is not blooming well. It is preventative. It is maintenance. It is not a cure for sick plants. Do not expect it to fix everything. The fourth mistake is not checking your soil before you start. Some soils are not acidic. Some soils, especially if you have had the rosebush for a long time and you have been adding things to it, are already too alkaline. If you add baking soda to soil that is already alkaline, you are making it worse, not better. You are not helping. You are hurting. If you think your soil might be alkaline, get it tested. Most counties have a soil testing service through the Cooperative Extension Office. It is cheap, maybe $5 or $10, and they will tell you exactly what your soil is. They will tell you the pH. They will tell you what nutrients are there and what are missing. Then you know what to do. If your soil is already alkaline, you do not need baking soda. You need something else. You need sulfur. You need to make it more acidic. But if your soil is acidic, which most are, then baking soda is your answer. The fifth mistake is using baking soda on the wrong plants. Baking soda for roses, yes. Baking soda works for roses because roses like soil that is slightly alkaline to neutral. But not all plants like alkaline soil. Blueberries like acidic soil. So do rhododendrons. So do azaleas. If you use baking soda on the wrong plant, you will hurt it, not help it. You will make the soil wrong for that plant. You will cause problems. Roses like soil that is slightly alkaline to neutral. That is the sweet spot. That is why baking soda works for them. But do not use it for everything. Now let me tell you something that will make clear to you why you have never heard this before. Why this simple thing is not common knowledge. Why every rose grower in America is not doing this. Why the garden centers are not telling you this. I am not telling you a man schemed this in a back room. No one had to conspire. It is worse than a conspiracy because it is a system nobody had to coordinate. It simply pays better to sell a man a $50 bag of rose fertilizer every season than to teach him to keep a $1 box of baking soda in his cupboard. Think about it. If every rose grower in America figured out that 1 tablespoon of baking soda per gallon of water, applied once or twice a season, makes roses bloom better than any expensive fertilizer, what would happen to the rose fertilizer business? It would collapse. Nobody would buy it anymore. Why would you spend $50 on a bag of rose food when you can spend $2 on baking soda and get better results? So nobody teaches this. Nobody puts it in the gardening magazines. Nobody writes about it in the newspapers. Nobody makes a commercial about it. The garden centers do not promote it. The fertilizer companies do not want you to know it. There is no profit in it for them. But there is profit in keeping you confused and scared. There is profit in making you think your roses will die if you do not buy their product. So that is what they sell. They sell fear. They sell the idea that roses are complicated and need special expensive treatment. They sell a whole system of products and sprays and dusts and injections when all along the answer was in your kitchen cupboard for less than the price of a coffee. For less than the price of one fancy coffee drink, you can have what you need for a whole season. I am not angry about this. I am just telling you the truth. The system does not require a conspiracy. It requires only that nobody gets paid to tell you the truth. And that is how it works. That is how it has always worked. That is why the old ways are forgotten. Not because they stopped working, but because nobody makes money teaching them. But I am telling you now, because I am not selling you anything. I am not making money if you buy baking soda. I make no money from this at all. I am telling you because my great-grandmother knew this, and my grandmother knew this, and my mother knew this, and Esther's mother knew this. I am telling you because I have watched it work for my whole life. I have watched it in my own garden. I have watched my children use it in their gardens. I have watched my grandchildren use it in their gardens. I am telling you because the old ways work, and they are worth remembering, and they are worth passing on to the people who come after us. Let me say it back to you plainly so you have the whole thing in your mind and you do not forget it. In early spring, when the soil is moist but not soaking, you mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda with 1 gallon of water. You pour this slowly around the base of your rose bush, right where the roots are. You do this one time in early spring, and if you live somewhere with lots of rain, you might do it again 6 weeks later in early summer. Then you wait. You let the soil chemistry do its work. You do not expect results in a week. You do not check every day. You expect results in 4 to 6 weeks. And then, as the season progresses, you will see more buds. You will see bigger flowers. You will see the rose bush bloom like it was made to bloom. 1 box of baking soda. $2, maybe $3 total. Applied correctly 1 or 2 times, that is the entire method. That is all there is to it. And here's what I want to ask you in the comments. I read everyone. I learned the whole country from these comments. I learned what people are growing in Maine and in Colorado and in Georgia and in Texas. I learn about their soil and their weather and their struggles. Tell me about your roses. Do you have rose bushes? How many? What color are they? Are they old roses, varieties that have been around for 100 years, or are they new hybrid roses? Tell me where you live, what county, what state, what region. Tell me if you have had trouble with your roses blooming and what you have tried before. Tell me what you spent money on that did not work. Tell me if someone taught you about growing roses and who that was. Tell me if your grandmother grew roses. Tell me if you have ever tried baking soda on anything else in your garden. Tell me what you think the soil in your yard is like. Is it heavy clay? Is it sandy? Is it rich and dark? Is it rocky? These comments are not just words to me. They are how I learn about the real country. They are how I learn what people are growing and what they are struggling with. They are how I know that there are still people out there who care about doing things the way it used to be done. Tell me your story. Tell me what you are trying. And if you know someone who loves roses, send them this video. Tell them there is a channel here that is honest. That does not try to sell them anything. That just tells them the truth about the old ways. Tell them to subscribe. Tell them to turn on notifications. Tell them this is worth watching. Next time, I'm going to show you something about tomatoes that changed my whole garden. Something about how to make them grow bigger and sweeter than you have ever seen, using something that most people throw away, using something that you probably have more of than you know what to do with. It is going to surprise you what it is. It is going to make you angry that nobody ever taught you this. It is going to change the way you think about waste and gardens and what the old folks knew. My grandfather used to say that roses are not just flowers. They are proof that there is something beautiful in the world that does not have to be complicated. You do not need a laboratory to grow roses. You do not need a degree in horticulture. You do not need to buy something from a man in a suit. All you need is the soil, the plant, and 1 tablespoon of baking soda. All you need is the willingness to do what your great-grandmother did, to pay attention to what the plant needs, to work with the soil, not against it, To trust that the old ways still work because they were built on something true. That is what keeps a person sane in this world. That is what keeps you connected to the people who came before you and built this country with their own hands. When you put that baking soda down in your garden, when you do it the right way and wait patiently for the results, you are not just making roses bloom. You are remembering that you do not need to be sold. You do not need to be afraid. You do not need permission or a product or an expert. You have hands, you have soil, you have a rose bush, and you have everything you need to make it beautiful. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. That is what matters.